The houses Michael Jackson called home. Neverland is me. It's the way I feel. I will never sell it. Picture this for a second. A man builds an entire private kingdom just to feel safe. Not a mansion for show, a fortress against the world. That was Michael Jackson's relationship with the places he lived. Over 4 decades, his addresses tell a story that has almost nothing to do with real estate and everything to do with a boy who never really got a childhood trying again and again to build one out of bricks, land, and gates. So where do we even start? A tiny house in Indiana that most people would drive right past. The house that started everything. At 2300 Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana, sits a modest, one-story home of roughly 672 square feet. Built in 1949, it had 2 bedrooms, and at one point it held all 10 members of the Jackson family. Try to imagine that for a moment. 10 people, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a driveway that doubled as a rehearsal space. This cramped little house was where Michael spent his first 11 years. There was no room to spread out, no privacy, and constant pressure from his father Joseph to rehearse until the harmonies and the footwork were perfect. In hindsight, it's almost poetic. The tightest, most unglamorous space imaginable produced one of the most explosive musical careers the world has ever seen. The family left Gary in 1969 after signing with Motown, but the house still stands today, preserved as something close to a shrine for fans who want to see where it all began. Doesn't it seem strange that the starting point for so much glamour was somewhere so plain? Let us know what you think that says about where talent actually comes from. A brief stop in West Hollywood. The move to Los Angeles wasn't instant comfort. There were hotel stays, a stint at Diana Ross's home in Beverly Hills, and a temporary rental on Lomita Drive before the family settled into a Mediterranean-style house on Queens Road in West Hollywood. For a kid who had just left a 2-bedroom bungalow in the Midwest, this was a different planet. It wasn't extravagant by later Jackson standards, but it gave the family breathing room, a place to adjust to fame that was still growing, without yet demanding the fortress-like isolation that would come decades later. Think of it as a decompression chamber between 2 totally different lives. Havenhurst, where the real story begins. In May 1971, the Jacksons bought a 2-acre property in Encino called Havenhurst. This wasn't just a bigger house, it was a statement. The family had arrived, and they finally had room to grow into it. Havenhurst is where a teenage Michael came into his own, both during the Jackson 5 years and later as he launched his solo career with Off the Wall. He had a private wooden dance floor installed in the home, and it's said he spent countless solitary hours there, working out choreography long before anyone else saw it. Under his father's strict guidance and his mother Catherine's steadier hand, this was where the discipline behind the King of Pop was actually forged. By the early 1980s, Michael had bought Havenhurst outright from his father, a quiet but significant move toward independence. Many people who knew the family consider this property, not any of the ones that came later, to be the true emotional center of Michael's life. Rebuilding the nest. By 1982, with Thriller on the horizon, Michael decided Havenhurst needed to change to match his new reality. He moved out temporarily while the old structure was largely torn down and replaced with an English Tudor-style home with an entirely new upper floor of private suites. The renovated house wasn't just bigger, it was built for someone who now needed both privacy and creative control in the same building. It included a 32-seat private movie theater, a full gym, a room to display his growing collection of awards, and, most importantly, a professional recording studio. It was inside that home studio that Michael developed the early demos for what would become the best-selling album of all time. Havenhurst had quietly gone from a shared family home to something closer to a private creative headquarters. Neverland, a manifesto, not just a mansion. In March 1988, Michael bought a 700-acre property in Santa Barbara County, reportedly for somewhere between $17 and $30 million. He renamed it Neverland Valley Ranch, a direct nod to Peter Pan and the idea of a place where nobody ever has to grow up. He had first seen the land back in 1983 while filming a music video with Paul McCartney, and something about it stuck with him. When he finally bought it at 29, it wasn't just a purchase, it was an exit. For the first time in his life, Michael had a place that belonged entirely to him, with no family structure attached to it. After a childhood spent almost entirely in front of cameras and under his father's supervision, Neverland was his declaration that he was now, finally, in charge of his own life. Here's a question worth sitting with. Was Neverland really about hiding from the world, or was it about trying to recover something the world had already taken from him? Building a childhood from scratch. What Michael did with that land was almost unbelievable. He installed a full amusement park, complete with a Ferris wheel, a carousel, and roller coasters. He kept a private zoo with elephants, giraffes, and other exotic animals, and built 2 separate railway lines that ran on a steam train he named Catherine, after his mother. And it wasn't just for him. Jackson regularly opened Neverland's gates to sick and underprivileged children, giving them a day of rides and animals completely free of charge. Maintaining all of it reportedly cost close to $10 million a year. In a lot of ways, Neverland wasn't really designed for adults at all. It was a physical attempt to give back the childhood Michael felt he'd never had, both to himself and to kids who needed it more than most. The quiet heart inside the chaos. For all the rides and animals outside, the main house at the center of Neverland was surprisingly restrained. The 13,000 square foot French Normandy-style residence had dark wood paneling, genuine 18th century French parquet floors, and a serious collection of fine art and bronze sculpture. There was even a hidden room behind a bookcase in the library, a private space within an already private world. The master suite alone had multiple walk-in closets and elaborate bathrooms, but the overall feeling inside wasn't showy. It was calm. For more than 15 years, this was the one place Michael actually lived his day-to-day life, separate from the spectacle happening just outside his windows. When the sanctuary broke, Michael was legally cleared in his 2005 trial, but something in him never recovered from what happened at Neverland during that period. Police searches had gone through his home, his bedroom, his private spaces, and for Michael, that seemed to permanently break the sense of safety the property was built to provide. Once the trial ended, he essentially walked away from Neverland for good. The rides went still. The gates stayed shut. He didn't sell it right away, but he never lived there again, choosing instead to become something like a global wanderer, moving between countries that had no painful memories attached to them. It's a strange twist. The place built specifically to protect his peace of mind became the place he associated most with losing it. A temporary peace in the Persian Gulf. Late in 2005, Michael found a temporary refuge in Bahrain, as a guest of a member of the royal family. Away from the intensity of the Western media, he spent months there doing ordinary things. Raising his 3 children, writing music, and living without the usual demands of fame pressing in on him. For someone who had been performing in some form since early childhood, this stretch of quiet, private life in the Gulf was rare. But it was never meant to be permanent. Once he felt more stable, Michael moved on, carrying that short window of calm with him. Rain, quiet, and Ireland. In 2006, Michael relocated to rural County Westmeath in Ireland, first staying at a property called Costello House before settling near Grouse Lodge Studios. The Irish countryside gave him something Neverland no longer could: genuine anonymity. He could walk outside without a swarm of cameras following him, and his children could simply play outdoors like any other kids. He didn't stop working, though. Michael recorded new material at Grouse Lodge during this period, in an environment about as far from Neverland's grandeur as possible, modest, low-key, and private. In many ways, Ireland gave him back a version of ordinary life he hadn't experienced in years. Vegas, fortress in the desert. By late 2006, Michael was back in the United States, renting a 17,000 square foot estate on Monte Cristo Way in Las Vegas for around $50,000 a month. High walls surrounded the property, and security was intense. At one point, he reportedly had a private, semi-hidden entrance built just to move in and out without being seen. Las Vegas made sense strategically. It fit his performance background, and it opened the door to early conversations about a potential residency show. But daily life there was anything but relaxed. Even simple family outings required security teams clearing out stores in advance. Hundreds of sealed crates of personal belongings, shipped over from Ireland and Bahrain, sat stored in the basement, a physical reminder that Michael was still, in some sense, living out of boxes. If you had to guess, how many homes do you think someone can move through before finally feeling settled? Michael was nowhere near done yet. The Thriller Villa. In 2007, Michael moved to a 1.7-acre compound on Palomino Lane, a property fans would later nickname the Thriller Villa. At over 24,000 square feet, it included a private chapel, a large home theater, and hidden vault spaces built to store his extensive fine art collection. Gold leaf detailing, crystal chandeliers, and deep red velvet gave the interior an almost royal feel, while high walls and tight security turned the whole property into something close to a private compound. For nearly 2 years, this was Michael's main American base, arguably the closest he came after Neverland to putting down roots again in the U.S., a foothold on the East Coast. Michael also kept a presence in New York, leasing high-floor suites in prestigious buildings, including the Trump International Hotel and Tower overlooking Central Park. These weren't homes in the traditional sense. They were bases for business meetings, negotiations, and industry collaborations. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private elevator access, and tight security made these spaces functional retreats rather than personal sanctuaries. Where Neverland offered space and solitude, these Manhattan suites offered something else entirely. Quick, secure access to the center of the entertainment and business world whenever he needed it. The final address. In December 2008, Michael leased a French-style chateau at 100 North Carrollwood Drive in the Holmby Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles, reportedly paying around $100,000 a month. The 7-bedroom mansion, designed by architect Richard Landry, had 3 floors, 13 bathrooms, and 12 fireplaces. With the This Is It concert residency in London approaching, this house effectively became mission control. Michael converted mirrored rooms into private dance studios so he could rehearse at any hour. He filled the space with personal items, family movies, and his children's artwork, trying to make it feel like a real home rather than a rental. Specialized medical equipment was quietly installed to help him recover between demanding late-night rehearsals. Despite his efforts, people close to him have described the mansion as never quite losing a certain hotel-like transient feeling. None of them could have known it at the time, but this rented chateau would turn out to be the very last home Michael Jackson ever lived in. What was left behind? After his death, 5 massive storage facilities in California, each roughly 20,000 square feet, were found packed with pieces of his personal history. Appraisers uncovered the sequined glove worn during Billie Jean, multiple Grammy Awards, arcade machines, custom cars, and even the original gate sign from Neverland Ranch. Mixed in with all of that were more personal items. Rare antiques, a boat, and a carved rocking horse said to have been a gift from Elizabeth Taylor. Experts who went through the collection reportedly struggled to put a price on it. Not because it wasn't valuable, but because so much of it simply couldn't be measured in dollars. A letter written at 21. Among everything stored away, one item stood out more than any gold record or stage costume. A single handwritten page dating back to 1979, written when Michael was just 21. In it, he laid out an extraordinarily specific vision for his future. How he wanted to look, how he wanted to perform, and the level of dominance he intended to reach in the industry. What's unsettling isn't the ambition itself. Plenty of young artists dream big. What's unsettling is how closely his actual career ended up matching what he wrote down that day. It wasn't a vague wish list. It read like a blueprint, one he seemingly followed with remarkable precision for the rest of his life. What would you write if you had to put your own future down on paper at 21? Would it look anything like how things actually turned out? A moving sanctuary. Even Michael's cars reflected the same need for privacy that defined his houses. His 1990 Rolls-Royce Silver Spur 2 combined heavy tinted windows and interior curtains with the kind of understated British craftsmanship you'd expect from that era: soft leather, polished wood trim, and a quiet V8 engine designed for comfort rather than speed. Inside, the car had its own communication equipment and entertainment system, letting him stay connected to the outside world while staying completely shielded from it. Unlike some of the flashier vehicles that would later join his collection, this Rolls-Royce represented something quieter. A small, moving version of the same privacy he was always chasing in his homes. So what was he actually looking for? Strip away the gold leaf, the amusement park, the hidden vaults, and the private jets, and a much simpler picture emerges. Michael Jackson wasn't really collecting real estate. He was searching house after house, country after country, for one thing that fame had made almost impossible: a place where he could just be himself without an audience. It's worth asking yourself, out of everywhere he lived, which of these places do you think came closest to actually giving him that? Drop your answer below, and if you've ever wondered about the other side of his story, the stage, the setbacks, or the mysteries that still follow his name, there's more of that waiting for you to dig into next.